Viking horror uncovered. Archaeologists reveal the brutal fate of conquered women. We know the Vikings for their warriors and epic battles. The women left behind became the true spoils of war. Their screams were silenced by time, but science is now giving them a voice. Iron collars and chains, sized for women and children, have been unearthed. The discoveries paint a chilling picture, a world where people were property. The Viking world was built on more than heroism. It was built on the suffering of the forgotten. Their story is the scream that history tried to forget. For Viking warriors, death in battle was an honorable end, celebrated in poetry and myth. To die with a sword in hand was the path to Valhalla, where feasting and fighting never ended. This belief gave meaning to violence and turned brutal death into glory. The warrior's story ended on the battlefield, his saga complete. Our view of the Viking Age is dominated by these men, their weapons, tactics, and dramatic graves. But this focus leaves women in the shadows. Their experience of war was entirely different. They were not combatants, they were the prize. When their men fell, their world collapsed. There was no Valhalla for them, no glory in their suffering. Their fate was not a heroic end, but a terrifying new beginning. Wives and mothers became captives, slaves, and bargaining chips. Their identities erased, their lives transformed into commodities. The warrior's death, in comparison, seems almost merciful. A man's life ended with the battle. A woman's torment began. She witnessed the destruction of her home, the death of loved ones, and then was led away in chains. Her future, servitude, fear, and violence. No songs were sung for her. Her story was one of survival against impossible odds. It's a story largely forgotten, overshadowed by the tales of the men who caused her suffering. The contrast is stark and deeply unsettling. The Viking Age's glory was built on the suffering of women whose stories were never told. Their fate was not written in sagas, but in scars and silence. The true cost of conquest was paid by those left behind, and their story is only now being uncovered. The old Norse sagas are our window into the Viking mind, epic tales of heroes, feuds, and voyages. Written centuries later, they blend fact, fiction, and propaganda, yet if we read carefully, they reveal the fate of women. Female captives are usually nameless, voiceless, part of the background. Warriors return from raids with goods and captives. Women are listed alongside silver and weapons. Their humanity is secondary to their economic value. They're given as gifts, traded, or forced into relationships. The sagas treat this casually, no moral judgment, just the way of the world. Abduction and enslavement of women was a standard outcome of a raid. Sometimes the sagas mention concubines forced into long-term sexual relationships. Children from these unions could become heirs, creating tense family dynamics. The saga of Olaf the Peacock features Melkorka, an Irish princess captured and sold as a slave. Her story is rare. Most captive women remained anonymous, their suffering ignored. The sagas were written by men, for men, about men. The female experience, especially that of a foreign slave, was of little interest. The truth is hidden in plain sight, whispered in the margins of heroic tales. The real stories of these women are buried beneath the legends. Their voices are faint, but they are there for those willing to listen. The Viking world thrived on trade, and one of their most profitable commodities was people. Archaeological digs in Viking trading centers reveal the infrastructure of this business. In Dublin, iron slave chains have been found, sophisticated collars designed for marching captives long distances. Markets like Hedeby and Birka bustled with human cargo from Ireland, England, and the Slavic lands. Captives were inspected like animals, their value assessed by age, strength, and appearance. Arab travelers described the Vikings as traders of perfect physical specimens, not a compliment, but a cold assessment of merchandise. Young women and children were the most valuable. Written accounts from outside Scandinavia confirm the scale of this trade. Vikings sailed rivers to the Black Sea and Caspian, selling captives in Byzantine and Abbasid markets. Slavery was a key pillar of the Viking economy. The psychological impact was devastating. Captives stripped of names, families, and identities. The chains found by archaeologists are cold proof of dehumanization. The Viking Age was not just exploration and adventure, it was industrial-scale human trafficking, with women and children as primary victims. The evidence is undeniable. The reality was far darker than legend suggests. In the Viking world, everything had a price, including people. Early law codes reveal the chilling legal status of slaves' property, not people. Owners could buy, sell, or kill their thralls without consequence. Laws even specified the price of a slave: age, gender, health, and skills determined value. Young, healthy women were especially prized for labor and reproduction. Any child she bore belonged to the master, increasing his wealth. Forced marriage was common, a way to legitimize claims to land and property. Raiding for captives was often more profitable than stealing gold. Enslaved labor powered the Viking economy, freeing men for more raids. Slavery created a permanent underclass with little hope of escape. Most captive women faced a lifetime of servitude in a foreign land. Their lives were governed by profit and loss, not humanity. The system was brutal, efficient, and inescapable. For most, freedom was a fantasy. Their suffering was the engine of Viking expansion. For some captive women, slavery was not the end. Ritual killing awaited. The Arab diplomat Ibn Fadlan described a slave girl sacrificed at a chieftain's funeral, a terrifying ordeal, not a willing act. Archaeology suggests such retainer sacrifices happened in Scandinavia, too. Graves, like Oseberg, may contain sacrificed servants, killed to accompany their mistress. Resistance was met with brutal punishment. Mass graves show executed women and children. These acts sent a clear message. Obedience was survival. Ritualized violence reinforced the master's absolute power. Public sacrifice demonstrated control, even beyond death. For captive women, the psychological impact was immense, a constant reminder of powerlessness. Their lives could be ended at any moment, for any reason. The rituals of terror kept the enslaved in submission. The horror was not just physical, but psychological. Their fate was a warning to all who witnessed it. The Viking slave trade was vast and organized. Captives were gathered, held in coastal camps, then shipped to distant markets. Archaeologists have found traces of these camps, fortified, strategic, and temporary. The journey was brutal, chained, exposed to the elements, given minimal food and water. Many died from disease, exposure, or abuse. Surviving captives arrived in bustling ports like Dublin, York, Birka, and Hedeby, cosmopolitan centers of trade. For a woman from a small village, these places were alien and terrifying. Her fate was decided there, sold to a local farmer or a foreign merchant. Artifacts and DNA reveal the reach of these routes. People from across Europe ended up in Viking lands. The trade routes were arteries of commerce, with human beings as a main product. The voyage stripped captives of everything they knew. For most, it was a one-way trip into bondage. Their journey ended in a life of servitude, far from home. The end of the Viking Age didn't end slavery or the brutalization of women. Systems of exploitation simply changed names. The Norman conquest brought feudalism. Serfdom replaced slavery, but women's lives were still controlled. The church became a major landowner, holding thousands of serfs. Chains became ideological as well as physical. In Scandinavia, Christianity changed the language, but not the reality. Internal slave trade continued. The crusading era brought new victims. Baltic peoples conquered and enslaved. The process was the same, only the names changed. For women, little improved. Her body and children belonged to the Lord. Systems of control became more bureaucratic, justified by new laws and religion. The underlying truth remained: women's freedom was subject to powerful men. The nightmare simply took new forms. The suffering continued long after the last longship sailed. For centuries, the story of these women was erased, ignored by history and legend. But now, science is forcing us to listen. Bioarchaeology uncovers evidence left out of the books. Isotope analysis reveals women buried in Viking graves were often born far away. Captives, not locals. Their bones show signs of poor nutrition, violence, and hard labor. Mass graves tell the other side of the story. Women buried without ceremony, sometimes with children, often showing trauma. These remains speak more powerfully than any text. They are the physical proof of forgotten victims. Science has given them a voice. The darkest truth of the Viking Age is emerging. Its glory was built on the suffering of women. Their stories, once silenced, are now being heard. The bones don't lie. The forgotten are finally remembered.